You are listening to the Stop Binge Eating podcast with Kirsten Sarfty, episode number 191. Welcome to the Stop Binge Eating podcast. It's time for you to end your food obsession and begin feeling confident and in control around food. You are absolutely capable of eliminating binge eating from your life, and I'm going to show you how by giving you simple tools and insights that you can apply in your own life. I'm your host, Kirsten Sarfty. Now let's get to it. Hi! This episode is being released at the end of March, so if you're listening to this soon after it was released, you are currently finishing up or just finished up the first quarter of the year. Q1 is complete. How'd it go for you? Did you do what you expected? Are you where you expected to be? And did you even set expectations? Did you give yourself any sort of guidance for how you wanted these past 3 months to go and what you wanted to do? One of the biggest mistakes I made when I was binging was not doing that at all. I can't tell you how many times I just said, I'm not binging anymore. And that was it. There was no game plan, no strategy, nothing, just a declaration. So it made sense when I'd feel an urge and just give into it. I did zero preparation for it. I also wasn't helping myself to not even feel urges. If anything, I was continuing to do things that were contributing to me feeling urges without even knowing it. I actually found 2 of my old journals where I made beginning of the year declarations. So on January 1st of 2011, I wrote, "No binging, no matter what. What a dumb thing to allow myself to do. Stop." Now, I never wrote about it again for the rest of the year in any of the entries that I wrote, but I will tell you, I am positive that that declaration was followed by many, many binges. It's so interesting to me that I didn't write about it more. I mean, I think I did sometimes on like random pieces of paper, but those got thrown away, probably once I binged and gave up on whatever I wrote about. But for whatever reason, it didn't make it into my journal. But I'll tell you what did. A lot of thoughts about men that I had crushes on and dated. And a lot of venting happened in my journals. So then on January 18th of 2015, I wrote, "My biggest goal for this year is to be binge-free for the whole year." Now, that's a lofty goal, I know. However, I feel ready. I've never attempted this before. Usually, I just don't want to do it forever. But for some reason, putting the year mark on it makes it sound easier. And I made some rules for myself to help me. And man, I wish I knew what those rules were. But I have a pretty good idea of what they might have been. I bet there must have been a calorie goal and rules about not eating certain foods and exercise rules, because those were my usual go-tos. And I also wish I had written more about my eating after to see what actually happened. I didn't write regularly that year. So the next entry was a week later, and it was mostly about work. Then the next was a few months later, and I mentioned how I gained 5+ pounds in February and March with little success, taking it off in April as I planned. And then I didn't write again until November, when I, unsurprisingly, was only talking about a guy that I was dating. So not much actual work going on with my eating, just more thinking about not binging. Any actions I committed to weren't what were really going to help me. Sure, plenty of times I had next steps for myself, but they weren't helpful next steps. And had I actually taken the time to realize that, instead of just repeating the same things over and over without success every time, I would have probably made more progress sooner. Then again, I also would have needed someone to help me, someone that actually had been in my shoes or at least truly understood binging and knew how to get out of it. Because all the advice that I found wasn't solving the root cause of the problem. So those 2 together, evaluating what hasn't worked and getting guidance from someone who did know what would work, were what I needed. And it's eventually what did help me to stop binging. So that's what I recommend for all of you too. You already have someone guiding you. That would be me. And I'm here giving you tons of tools to work with and tips for working on your binge eating. So finding something to work on shouldn't be a problem. You can just look through the 190 episodes I've posted so far and find something, anything. And now to decide what you're going to do next, you evaluate and strategize and plan. And I'll show you how to do that. Now, I bring this episode to you now because it's the start of the second quarter of the year, and I personally do an evaluation and a planning session for myself in my business every quarter, as a lot of businesses do. And I think it's a good chunk of time to work with, both for having time to evaluate the previous time period and time to plan out the next. Not too little, not too much. Now, you can, of course, do this kind of thing at any time. Evaluate and plan daily, weekly, monthly, all of the above, whatever you want. Please take what I'm talking about today and use it at any time. So download and save this episode to come back to. Doesn't matter when you decide to do it, just do it. Give yourself some kind of structure, some kind of plan, instead of just deciding on a goal without any plan at all, like I used to. And not only that, but make sure you're not just repeating the same things over and over that won't work, like I also used to do with my unhelpful rules. Planning how you're going to stop binge eating is helpful, but it's not going to be helpful if you're planning to do things that you've proven to yourself won't work, or at least won't work without doing other things too, like thought work and feelings work, like I've talked about through so much of the episodes of this podcast. So before you figure out what you're going to do next, evaluate what you've done. Start by first evaluating what has worked well for you. Start by looking at the good and the helpful. Start by looking at what you've been successful with and write down everything you can think of. Big stuff, small stuff, all the stuff. Basically, you'll start on a high note. It feels better to start there. And this is also showing you what would be useful for you to continue doing. Don't ignore what works. Acknowledge it so you know what to continue, and maybe you could do more of it to create more success depending on what it is. Then write down everything that you've tried that didn't help. Also write down what you tried that didn't stick. So the things that you did consistently that didn't really help you, so you can see that these are not things to be focusing on. Like for me with making calorie goals or making foods off limits. If I had only opened my eyes sooner to the fact that doing those weren't helping me to stop binge eating, I could have looked for other things to do instead of continuing to use my energy on them. And then the things that you think will or could help that you're just not doing consistently. Those are the things you're going to break down into smaller goals in the next step, which is to write down what you will do differently and what you want to try that's new. You're going to get all the new ideas on paper. So say one of the things that could help you that you haven't been doing consistently is to do morning journaling to set yourself up for the day. What is one thing or more than one thing that you can do differently to help you do that? What are the smaller goals within this goal? Or how can you make your journaling more enjoyable for you? Or how can you make it create more of an impact so that you'll be more motivated to do it? And let's say a new thing that you want to try is pausing before you eat. What are the smaller goals within that goal? What can you do to help you do that? Get all your ideas for goals and any smaller goals within the goals down on paper. Now, when you look at this list, you might feel one of two feelings: overwhelmed or excited. If you're overwhelmed, it's because you're thinking there's too many things. If you're excited, it's because you're seeing all the options you have that could work for you. My suggestion? Choose the excited way to look at it. This list is not a list of all the things that you need to do. You may not have to do all of them, but it's a list of all the things that you can try. This is so much better than just being in, I don't know, and having nothing. So be excited that you have things to try and know that you're not going to tackle them all right now, or maybe ever if you don't have to. You're going to pick the ones that you want to work on first, and this is how you'll decide what those will be. Go through your list of things that you want to be more consistent with and things that you want to try that you haven't, and mark what you think would be the easiest for you to do. What would be the most doable thing for you? And mark it. Then go through the ones that you marked and use a different mark to note which you think would be the most impactful. Which of those easiest ones do you think would make the biggest changes for you? And now you're going to pick the 3 easiest and most impactful things that you want to work on. Now, I say 3, but how many you choose is up to you. I'm just giving this as a guideline for you to start with. Just know that the less that you focus on, the more quickly you'll create a habit with each. When you split up your focus, you're splitting up your time spent on building each into a habit. So I'd say a maximum of 3 at any given time. Don't overwhelm yourself by trying to do your whole list at once. Your brain can only handle so much change at one time before you exhaust yourself. So just pick 3 that you think will be the easiest and most impactful and start there. And then as you work on those consistently, you'll become skilled at them and you'll begin to see them become habits. And once they do, move on to another thing on your list. And when you feel like you have the capacity for it, try something that seems hard but will be impactful. And maybe do that one just on its own, so you're only working on that one at one time. And of course, break it down as much as you can into the most doable steps you can think of to accomplish it. Always try to make it as easy as possible for yourself. And lastly, make a plan for when and how you're going to work on these things. Are you going to do more journaling? When are you going to do it? Are you going to pause before giving in to urges? How are you going to make sure that you do that? Are you going to prep your food for the day or for the week? When will you do that? How are you going to make sure that you are being kind and forgiving to yourself if you binge or make a mistake? If it's something you want to do at a certain time of day, when will you do it? And have a backup. What if you can't do it at that time? When will you? And if it's something that is circumstance dependent, how will you make sure that you do what you want to do when the time comes to do it? How can you make sure you remember? Answer those questions. Get yourself as prepared as you can and get to work on it. That is how you're going to figure out what you will do next. The thing about this work on stopping binge eating is that there is no perfect roadmap. Even in my program, everyone has their own path. Yes, I provide a course that teaches you what to do in a certain order, but people go out of order and that's okay. All roads lead to Rome, whether they jump ahead on a topic and then go back to one I gave them earlier or skip something and go back to it later. No matter which way they go, they get what they need when they need it, and that's how it will be for you too. You're going to assess yourself and decide what's next for yourself. You'll pick the next best step for you without overwhelming yourself by all the options, and definitely by not stalling yourself by saying that there's nothing else you can do. That's a total lie. There's something if you take the time to think about it like I taught you here. Then you just pick one that you think that you can do and that you think will make a difference. Don't worry about making the wrong choice. Just make a choice. Try something new. Try something different. Just don't keep trying the same things that aren't working over and over without making any changes. There is something else that you can try to do next. Decide what it is and get to work on it. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Stop Binge Eating podcast. If you like what you heard today and you want more, go to coachkir.com/free. That's COACHKIR.com/free to get some awesome free stuff to help you stop binge eating.